Hello, my lovelies. It is me, EB, and we are back for another great episode of Scandal Queens. This week, you're going to love it. It is a topic that isn't getting touched on enough. We have talked about this person to death. If you follow me on TikTok, you have seen me kind of puncture this little balloon a little bit. But overall, I haven't seen a lot of talk about some of the red flags we're seeing about that person. So that is what it's all about today. You've guessed it from the title, folks. We are going to be talking about the infamous Jojo Siwa. Now, this pop girly seems all glittery and bubbly and pink, even despite this new kind of rebrand she's been going through. But I did some serious research for this episode, and I gotta tell you, I think Jojo Siwa is anything but this bright and bubbly pop girl dance chick that we have, that some people have come to know and love. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The dark side of Jojo Siwa. Buckle up. It is going to be a ride for sure. So it's probably just best to start at the beginning because that's where I had to start. I had no idea who this person was. Okay. Obviously, I'm old. I'm in my mid 30s. I'm over the hill, according to a lot of the people who line this person's fandom. So I had to dig deep. I had to find out, who is this Jojo Siwa? I've seen the memes. I've seen this ridiculous Kiss knockoff makeup and the cringe, which we will talk about here in a little bit. But who is this Jojo Siwa and why is she such a big deal? How has she burst on the scene like this? Miss Jojo Siwa was actually born Joelle Joni Siwa in 2003. And she was born to, and this is so important, this person is going to come up again and again. She was born to Jessalyn Siwa, who is her mother, who was a professional dance instructor, whatever that means, because they were in Nebraska. And her dad, Tom Siwa, who's a chiropractor. Now, Jojo does have an older brother as well, who was a vlogger trying to make it big, trying to do what she did until he gave up that ghost and let his sister chase that dream so he could go off and chase real estate. So that's the family that she was born into. And that's kind of where she came from, right? She's this middle America family, just down home Nebraska, cute little kid, likes to dance. That's how she bursts onto the scene in her first appearance. So the first time we kind of see Jojo Siwa and her mother is going to be around 2013, and she appears on one of Abby Lee Miller's dance competitions. And for those who don't know, Abby Lee Miller is the infamous instructor of the Abby Lee Miller Dance Studios, and she does that show Dance Moms, where kids are terrorized into being perfect dancers and their crazy stage moms fight each other in the little weird boxy room with the giant window over the dance studio. So Abby Lee Miller, she's at the peak of this kind of fame with Dance Moms, and she does her own dance competition. And in season 2 of that is the first time we see Jojo and her mom. And Jojo immediately becomes like a little miniature star in this little Dance Moms competition world. So she does really well. She ends up getting, I think, second place on the show or something like that. She basically comes in second at this competition, but she and her mom are eliminated. So in week 9, they're eliminated, but they remain fan favorites. And Jojo keeps auditioning, keeps pushing, because the real goal for the people who were on this competition show was to get into Abby Lee Miller's main team, which was the focus of the Dance Moms show. Okay. Because Abby Lee had this one high performance dance team that won all the awards, and those competing on the show were competing for a spot in there. So Jojo finally gets that in 2015. And this is when most people come to know her, because when she gets that spot in Abby Lee Miller's premier dance team, she also gets onto the show Dance Moms. And just like she was super popular in the competition show, she becomes super popular on Dance Moms. And it's because of that Midwestern charm. She and her mom play up that whole, oh, hunky dory, we're just hardworking and from the Midwest. It's just the cliche, the absolute cliche. And Jessalyn, the mom, really pushes in here. She becomes one of the controversial stars of the show because she's sitting up in that box fighting with the other moms, and she's a professional dancer and all this other kind of stuff. So pay attention to that, because I'm already rolling my eyes. You can already see this mother forming in your head, can't you? Midwest professional dancer living through her child because her moment is pretty much gone. Yeah. So that's 2015. Jojo makes that team and she gets on the Dance Mom show in 2015. Big deal. blows up. Everybody who follows Dance Mom, that's when they kind of come to know little Jojo Siwa. And she's still a minor at this point. So in 2016, she explodes. That's the year after she gets Dance Mom. She absolutely explodes. She releases a song called Boomerang, which has been played on YouTube over 1 billion times and has more than 5 million likes. Boomerang is this like anti-cyberbullying anthem, which again, put that in your bonnet for a second, because that's going to be super ironic when we start talking about who JoJo is now. And she releases a couple of these other songs like I Can Make You Dance. She's very, very popular. She's on YouTube. And interestingly, this is when she also produces that terrible hair bow line. I don't care if you like it or not. Ridiculous, like over the top. She releases this hair bow line and she's wearing these big, ridiculous hair bow lines. And she says it's about believingness, whatever the hell that means. And it's so controversial that it gets banned in UK schools because girls start getting bullied because of them. It creates this huge culture war in UK schools, and it's a huge distraction, and girls are getting like peer pressured and bullied and all this other stuff. So they get banned in UK schools. So this is JoJo's wind up. By the time we get to 2017, she's a Nickelodeon star. She gets her own movie. It's called Burst or Blurt or something like that, with Jace Norman, who's is it Jace Norman? Whoever, Jace something. And it's a big deal. Gives JoJo even more visibility because this is like the Zoe 101 kind of era. I mean, it's a little bit after that, but you know what I'm talking about when they started doing all these weird tween shows and moved away from the cartoons at Nickelodeon. So JoJo becomes part of that. She's working with Nick Cannon and all these other things. By 2018, she's got her own accessory line with JCPenney's, which is a huge deal. It's like all these bedroom accessories that look like if Lisa Frank got completely hammered in 2003 and vomited all over a little girl's room. And she also gets her own doll. And little girls are just mad for Jojo Siwa. They're mad for her. They want the tight little ponytail with the big bow. They're buying the dolls. They're buying everything from her. Now, in 2019 is where I think we start to see the first cracks and where I start to see the first red flags in the things that I do. And, you know, the work that I do with like narcissistic families and toxic people and manipulators and all that kind of stuff. So in 2019, there's 2 big moments. First big moment is JoJo gets her first tour. It's called the Dream Tour, 52 cities in the US. They're also going to go to Australia and the UK and Canada. Big, big deal. She's going to play amphitheaters and these outdoor arenas, and kids go crazy for it, and they start selling tickets like crazy. So that's the first big event. And this kind of catapults JoJo to an even bigger level because she's not just a Nickelodeon star now, right? She's breaking away from that and creating her own platform. She's like actually selling herself as a child's pop idol, you know, a way outside on her own. Now, the second big moment is that this is the year that Claire's teams up with JoJo to release a makeup line. And guess what happens to that makeup line? It gets recalled. Why did it get recalled? Because it's packed full of asbestos, which causes lung cancer and mesothelioma. Asbestos. And there's several cosmetic lines from Claire's right around the same time that all get recalled for having fucking asbestos in them. So JoJo and her mother and her team slapped her name on makeup products and then flogged them onto her little child minor fans without even checking that it was safe for them, which shows that they definitely weren't using the products, right? Because they wouldn't be putting that on their face. Which, if it's not good enough for you, why is it good enough for your fans? Anyway, the whole thing gets recalled, and JoJo and her team are just kind of quiet about it. It's just like, uh-oh, we just didn't know. How would we possibly know? Well, you should be checking the ingredients of something before you put your name on it. So that's the huge first big red flag for me before we get into the real deep stuff. But this is who we're starting to see JoJo, at least the people around her, as, right? A cash grab. I'm seeing some greed. I'm seeing some self-centered behavior. Now, at this point, we're getting into 2020 to the 2023 era. And this is JoJo now coming out of this kind of like young adulthood into her, you know, adolescence, her early 20s, right? She's becoming an actual adult at this point. And it's, you know, she's growing up and she's glowing up. She starts doing a lot of like big one-off gigs, which just kind of keep her in the public eye. She's on The Masked Singer as a T-Rex. She performs as a same-sex couple on Dancing with the Stars, which is their first one, and they place second, and it's a really big deal. And she gets her own cereal from General Mills. I mean, it's really like working itself into one of those little kid pop idol frenzies. In 2021 now, she gets a board game. She gets a board game with Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon's like, let's release this board game, and we're going to market it to children ages 6 and up. Now, the problem is this board game had questions in it about nudity, about crime, about getting arrested, stuff that was really, really, like really outrageously inappropriate for children. Nickelodeon has to withdraw this game. This game is so bad. Parents get so upset about it that they have to withdraw this game. And it's this like, it's called JoJo's Big Ride or some stupid thing. It's her game with her face and her branding on it. And it gets so bad that she has to come out and go, oh no, I'm so sorry. That's so inappropriate. I can't believe how inappropriate the stuff in the game was. They used my image and my likeness to promote this game, and I just had no idea. And again, it's like, how do you put your face on something that you've obviously never even touched? Again, red flag. Obviously, someone said, here's some money, and JoJo and her team said, yeah, thanks, cool, whatever. And then we're selling a game with really inappropriate elements to very young children who idolize her, right? Who idolize her. This video game, this board game's got like nudity and stuff in it. So conveniently, as that happens, this is also when JoJo comes out. JoJo comes out in 2021, says, I'm actually queer, which is great. That's wonderful representation, but the timing's a bit odd. The timing is a bit odd. Now in 2022, again, she's even more grown now. She's an adult. She is judging on Dancing with the Stars. She's getting anti-bullying awards, which again, put that in your cap because that's going to be really interesting in just a minute. She does this big dance with Dick Van Dyke for his 98 years of magic or whatever it is. And everything seems groovy. She's kind of like Taylor Swift for children, even though I would say Taylor Swift is for children. But she's this huge little pop idol for young girls and children. And it seems like that's where she's going to go. She's going to ride off into the sunset. She's had some bad makeup. She's had some bad board games, but she's a YouTube star. She's a pop star. She's on the rise. Everything is coming up, JoJo. Or is it? This is what we're really all here for. This is what I'm here for. This is what you're here for. And this is what I think is really important to talk about, especially if you are someone who's been a JoJo fan or who has kind of put her on a pedestal, or maybe you're someone who's just questioning this really weird behavior, because I think it all ties down to this next part of the story, which we don't care who JoJo is in the past anymore. We're now looking at JoJo's scandals. We're going to look at who JoJo has allegedly been behind the scenes, because that is crucial. And it all kicks off in February of 2024. Now, in February of 2024, some shocking allegations come out about a group called XOMG Pop, which was this little girl group that JoJo and her mother Jessalyn had put together on a television show that they were running. It was a reality show called like Siwa's Dance Camp or Siwa's Dance Stars or something like that. And essentially the premise of the show, they started working on it around 2021, 2022. The premise of the show was JoJo and her mother were going to put together the next chart-topping girl group. That's what they were going to do, and that's what they set out to do. Now, in 2024, former members of this group, which I'm not even going to read them here because there's just too many. This group hemorrhaged users, you guys. This group flip-flopped through users with like no explanation, with members like crazy with no explanation. People would just come and go like there was one of those saloon doors just flapping open and close constantly. In February of 2024, these members come up and start speaking out, and the allegations are pretty terrible. They basically said that their time in this group was horrendous, that they were abused, taken advantage of, pitted against each other, just like the worst possible treatment that you could imagine. And when you read the allegations, wow, does it smack of narc abuse? Okay. Here's some of the allegations. Now, a lot of it centered around Jessalyn. JoJo's mother, which is why I said keep that in your bonnet, because we're going to come back to it. But there's a lot of JoJo in here too. Now, according to several of the former members, they had to endure grueling rehearsals, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours without appropriate breaks. Not only were they not given appropriate breaks, remember, these are minors. These are all kids. They were not allowed to go to their school breaks, according to them, which is very illegal. Very illegal. I know Hollywood plays pretty fast and loose with that, but, you know, there's supposed to have been a lot of laws passed that's supposed to make it harder for them to get away with not schooling kids. And apparently that was being ignored on this show. There was one of the girls who ended up having spinal surgery, which a minor having spinal surgery after intensive dance makes you question it. But even after she had the spinal surgery, she was pressured by Jessalyn and by JoJo, allegedly, to perform after that and to rehearse after that. Right before she had her surgery, she was still being forced to rehearse. And according to this dance member, during one of the rehearsals, she started bleeding from her belly button and panicked because you're a child bleeding from your belly button. What the fuck? You're gonna panic, right? That's very scary. Jessalyn allegedly told her to slap a maxi pad on it and get back to work. So this is the kind of environment that's being alleged. Now, in that environment, and you can go and read all of this. This is in a huge Rolling Stone expose. Jessalyn was especially cruel. The words that the Rolling Stone article used was overtly cruel. She would call the girls names. Apparently one of the girls had some kind of a disability and she was mocked for it as a form of punishment. Again, all alleged. And then what's really interesting to me is one of the mothers who was talking about her daughter's experience in the group said, you would have the worst day ever. Like, you would go and be called names and your daughter would be abused all day and there'd be huge fights and, you know, all these terrible things would happen. And then you would get back to the hotel room and there would be a huge gift basket with like a Nintendo Switch and a really nice note, like these big grandiose gestures, which what do we know about narcissistic abuse? Love bombing, right? Like this kind of love bombing and hoovering behavior that happens, which is what keeps people in this weird flux of like, this is terrible. Oh no, this is great. This is terrible. The grandiose gestures on the other side, which are meant to make you forget the abuse and also less likely to tell, right? Because if these parents are getting these big extravagant gifts, they're less likely to go to the media, aren't they? So that's one side. And JoJo as well, the girls were alleging that she was nasty, that she was domineering, that this whole like smiley, pop, bubblegum girl persona that she puts on is the fakest thing ever, and that her personality is the complete opposite. These former members allege that she would pit them against each other. There was like chats and emails and text messages and all this other kind of stuff where she would try to make them fight against each other and dislike each other. Lots of like name calling and emotional abuse and just really obviously like this objectification of these people. They don't sound at all like they were people. They were a means to an end to both Jessalyn and to JoJo, and they were basically treated like cattle, you know, like draft horses. You know, and this is not a slight against the Amish community, but there are some elements in the Amish community, some small parts of the Amish community where you see like these draft horses that get really heavily worked, and some of them unfortunately get really heavily abused. And then when they can no longer, they're so broken that they can't carry the plows anymore, they just get sold to the glue factories. And it very much feels like this kind of environment if you go and read these allegations in the Rolling Stone expose on Jojo Siwa and this XOMG Pop girl group, because it's really terrible. And I think it really paints a picture of Jessalyn, especially as this kind of domineering mother who JoJo is just taking right after, just whoop, picking it right up, as we know so many people do. So that's the first big nasty pot of allegations that come out, but that's not all that's come out, because JoJo has been involved in another of other controversies, which I think is important to pay attention to, not least of all the Colleen Ballinger controversy. For those who don't know, because I sure didn't, Colleen Ballinger, who was the comedian that did Miranda Sings, a year or two ago, it came out that she was grooming minors and had all this inappropriate contact with minors and all these chat groups. I mean, it's absolutely shocking and horrific, all the stuff that was going on. JoJo was around that. JoJo was very close with Colleen. I think she may have been dating Colleen and defended her. When all this came out and the people who had been abused by Colleen came out, she dismissed them. She made a post basically saying that That's not real grooming. I'll tell you what real grooming is. Just like, she was horrible and disgusting, especially as a woman in the industry. You would think she'd be a bit more compassionate, but no. JoJo chose to defend Colleen, and as far as I know to this day is still defending Colleen, which is disgusting. And if you think that's bad, guess what? She also defends James Charles, and still is. James Charles, another YouTuber influencer who was messing with minors. So it's not good. It's not good. That's a huge red flag. At least for me, when we're looking at Jojo Siwa. So why do I think that this all is so important for you to know? Is it just for the gossip? I don't think so. Why I think Jojo is so interesting is because I think we could potentially be witnessing a generational leap in narcissism, right? We have all these stories of her mother that really paint her mother, again, as I said, as this controlling, domineering, narcissistic woman. I can't find any good stories about Jessalyn. I looked for them. I mean, there's also this story that Jojo told where she proudly talks about, oh, I lived with my romantic partners by the time I was 19 years old. What the hell is a 19-year-old doing living with two separate romantic partners by that age? That's crazy. And it shows a parent who is not appropriately involved in their child's life. Maybe a parent playing friends, or it may be a parent who just doesn't care what her child does off the clock as long as her child produced for her what needed to be produced. It's a huge red flag. And I think we're seeing similar red flags in JoJo right now. And yeah, I know she's really, really young and she could absolutely change. I want everyone to keep that in mind when I talk about what I'm about to talk about next. She absolutely could change. She could absolutely be different. But there are some huge red flags that I just really don't think can be ignored. First of all is the weird way she talks about kids. I don't know if you guys have heard the way that she talks about children, but there's an insane clip on TikTok where she says, oh, I'm going to have 3 kids, Eddie, Teddy, and Freddie, something like that. And I've already got tattoos for them, and just kind of like spirals out on this fairy tale projection. And she's like talking about doing this, pretty soon in the future. It's alarming as someone who's the child of a narcissist because she talks about children like they're objects. She's literally talking about these 3 possessions like, I'm going to produce these 3 things. I know what already they're going to be. They're going to be that thing, and I'm going to have this perfect life, and that's what it's going to be. There's no wonder of humanity. There's no like, I'm going to have these people, and wow, they're going to be human beings, and let's see what they become. No, they are a part of the image to JoJo, and you can already tell by the way she's talking about them. Where do I think she learned that? Probably from her mother and the environment that she grew up in. When you look at it coupled with the allegations of the XOMG Pop girl thing, it fits because those girls, those children were treated like objects by JoJo and her mother. And then JoJo sits in an interview and very proudly talks about children like they're objects. So giant red flag there, and me very worried for any future children that are unlucky enough to have JoJo as their mother. There's also these weird cringe Disney videos, which yes, we were all so cringe when we started drinking in our early 20s. I even have horrible cringe videos of me drinking at Disney in my early 20s. They exist, I'm sure. There's definitely pictures. But it's different with JoJo, and here's why. There's one specific video where she's sitting hammered outside of a little alcoholic stand, I think probably in Epcot, and she's singing her own song, and she's trying to make everyone sing with her. And people are like, yeah, we know the song, we just don't want to sing it. And she's trying to force them to sing it. And it's the most cringy thing. And people are visibly uncomfortable, visibly annoyed. And JoJo can't tell. She cannot tell. She just wants them to pay tribute to her. And she's seated herself in this circle in this middle of this thing. It is the most obnoxious and cringe thing. And it just screams like a narcissist who has no self-perspective, no self-awareness, and no awareness of others. And I know some of you say, what if she's neurodivergent? Just, that's not. That's not what's happening here. I mean, she very well could be, but this is not like a lack of social perception. This is a demand for supply and a like, why don't you know who I am? It's very, very cringe. And then there's the clips. The last big kind of red flag for me is the way she talks about herself. the way she talks about herself, and she's talked about herself within this rebrand, like she's this amazing, world-changing, life-changing thing, and that she's doing all these things that have never been done before. And that's the kind of thing about narcissistic people, is they live in that kind of delusion. No evidence to support it. Like, yes, JoJo has been very lucky in her life, and marketing teams and business people have created an incredible career for her, made her and them millions and millions of dollars using her likeness and persona. But she herself hasn't done anything exceptional. I mean, you can go and look the videos of how she dances now. We're like 5 years away from Justin Timberlake territory. You know what I mean? She doesn't seem to have a lot of awareness or a lot of reality about who and what she is. She thinks she's incredibly special, and again, with no evidence. So that just, to me, kind of fits that narcissistic delusion, that grandiosity of self that's not at all rooted in reality. And it's a red flag. For me, it's a serious red flag, and it's one that I hope her fans are taking seriously, because, ooh, it's a doozy. What are you supposed to do with this information? What do any of us do with this? Because it's just not like consuming the scandals of these assholes is not really beneficial unless we take it and apply it some positive lives. And I think that's the main message all of you take away from this. Especially if you're a fan of JoJo, you have to be so careful with the kind of worship and idolization of these personality types, because they can seem very charming. They work very hard to create charming personas, but a lot of the times it's the same creeping darkness underneath. I was literally just talking to a friend about this, about, like, most people don't break the cycle because they're too lazy and they're too scared. And that's certainly true in the narcissistic families. You see generation after generation, multiple siblings fall into the same toxic, dysfunctional patterns as their parents, taking on all that darkness that crushed them in the first place, because it's easier to just stick with what you know. And it's scary leaping into what you don't know, which, in JoJo's case, might be breaking out of an industry that's objectified her, breaking away from a parent who has probably been codependently attached to her because of the need for supply. It's such a cautionary tale that I think we can take a lot of lessons from, and, start to see the lack of cycle breaking patterns in some of these people. And again, it's that same thing, right? Like, you need to see these celebrities as humans and maybe stop giving all your money to them. If you want to watch them and be entertained by them like clowns at a circus, fine, but maybe stop buying their asbestos makeup every time they release it. Don't give it to your children, for sure, because they're not giving it to their children. I think here with JoJo, we have to be so careful. And these are kind of like my last thoughts on it, because I don't see a lot of cycle breaking. And so if I were anyone who had a daughter that was going near JoJo, be it for work or romance, I would be extremely suspicious, cautious. I, for myself, don't want to give her any more attention than she's already got from me, because that makes her grow, right? Narcissists are like Beetlejuice. The more you say their name, the more powerful they become. The more attention you give them, the more powerful they become. Unfortunately, with JoJo, I see someone who is already building a pattern as a young person of using people like objects and discarding them when they're no longer of use. And if that's not alarming to you, I don't really know what else would be alarming. I don't know what else to really tell you to look out for. And that, my friends, my lovelies, is going to be it for today. Keeping it nice and short and sweet today. Don't need to linger where the patterns are obvious. I hope you liked the episode. I hope you learned something from it. I hope it gave you something to look forward to next week, because it's going to be good. I'm going to have a special guest next time, and I think you're going to be super excited, because we're going to be talking about the royal family. Ooh, the royal family. No, not the American royal family. We're not getting into the Kardashians yet. That's coming. I have a multi-part series for you. But no, next week you will hear me with a very exciting guest who you might recognize from TikTok. And we're going to be talking about the royal family. A very, very twisted story, and even more interesting because of the still missing Kate Middleton. So hopefully you will join me next week for that. For everyone else, don't forget to follow Scandal Queens on Instagram and on TikTok at Scandal Queens Podcast. I think on TikTok it's just at Scandal Queens. And you can also follow me at The Real E.B. Johnson, basically everywhere that it matters. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. It's basically the same on Twitter. You'll find it. It's close enough. Thank you so much for listening. And for everyone else, if you loved it, leave a 5-star message, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps people find us. And until next time, keep your head up, keep your eyes on the stars, and keep moving forward. Bye-bye.